Okay, so I'm Zeta Govan, Ward 8 City Councilor, and I'm going to be opening this meeting. It's a joint meeting with the Eco Dev Committee and the Environmental and Sustainability Committee. Thank you all for being here. I don't see any other councilors, just myself, and we're here to talk about Wellspring Harvest. Might not be the right topic. Overlay district is what is on the agenda, but we might be changing that.
We're realizing that the term is misleading.
And we're gonna go through the chair, Miss Betsy.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you. Thanks, Phil, for being here. And I have Tim Sheehan and Patrick Greenhall here. Thank you so much. Fred Rose and Betsy Johnson from Wellspring Harvest. So Fred did do a presentation, prepared a presentation rather. And I know that we did have a tour of the greenhouse. I'd love for Tim and Patrick to come out to Indian Orchard sometime and just see it. It's really amazing. Oh, Catering was there. She could talk about it.
It's never so hot.
It's, we got Catering Walsh, City Councilor here. We started the meeting with Catering. Come on. Thank you. So, yeah, we'd welcome you all to Indian Orchard to do a tour, but this time I'll just let Fred, you could just do your presentation and say what you have to say.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Nice to be seen. Nice to be
Good to
seen.
meet you. I did a presentation last time
Yes,
that
you did.
included a background about the greenhouse. I don't know if I should do the whole presentation or just.
They know.
I had no idea that greenhouse was there.
Really?
All the times I've been in Indian Orchard, I was like shocked.
So that was one of my dreams. I've been thinking about a big greenhouse like that in our city for a long time, because when I used to do like community gardens in the summer, it was great. Then we'd have to turn them off for the winter. So I said, what we need is a greenhouse. And then I said, when I found one was coming to Indian Orchard, like in my backyard, I was so excited. So my dreams come true, y'all. So just hang on.
Now you just have to get Patrick to agree to your.
No, Patrick, I'm not doing it with him. I'll do it with Tim.
Okay. So, this, oh, I thought I did share.
Yeah, share the screen.
Didn't share. It says it's sharing.
Do you have the right thing up? Because it looks like you have your computer up and not the presentation.
Oh,
Here on his screen.
So
Yeah.
what you're sharing though?
oh. I thought you usually just share the
Hold on.
screen and then.
I don't know if anybody said anything to me, but I was having problems getting volume.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, thank you for coming on. So I'm
Welcome.
gonna stop the share,
I'll just
and then
be,
I'm gonna share. Wait, share. So you have to choose what you want to share. Where's your presentation? Right here.
We're working on sharing,
Share.
getting the,
Yeah, so Tracy, we started the meeting. Thank you for being here.
and Tim and Jose are also here.
Oh, they are here. Oh, hi, Tim Allen and Jose Delgado. I'm sorry, I didn't see you guys.
Is that Phil?
Bill Dromey, yep.
Okay.
All right, good to be here.
Thanks.
But in both Tim and
Okay, you're on.
Jose were at the.
Um,
Do you want to go slideshow?
Yeah. Get it to a
Just go, on.
slideshow.
Oh, we'll get to see all the side ones. It's, you have to just tip it that way.
Anyhow, so we had done a presentation last meeting that included some background about the greenhouse. Seems like
Yeah.
folks are familiar with the greenhouse, so we wanted to just focus on the presentation that we with the proposals that we wanted to, and at the last meeting, there was some discussion about overlay district. I guess we saw an overlay district as one strategy to, create an urban agricultural district that might allow for a different tax rate at the site. So there was some discussion last time about what is an overlay district, how do you use it? So this is from the Sustainable Development Code. It's a talks about what an overlay district is, which allows for local zoning. It does mention that, some cities are using that for urban agriculture, and that it does allow for tax rates or other changes at the site. So that's sort of the big concept. It talks about the need to identify the site, to identify the goals. It gives a flexibility for local goals. And so we had looked at some examples. I mean, Cleveland has an urban agriculture overlay district that they've developed a map of the city. They've identified sites. It's something that there's a proposal process so that you go to the city planning commission and you can make an application to be recognized as part of this urban district. So how Cleveland has done it. Los Angeles is another example of a city that's developed an urban agricultural system. They call them agricultural incentive zones. They have specifically allowed for reduced property tax assessments on the sites in order to make them affordable. And then I think we recognize that different cities have shaped this in different ways and have used different terminology. There are many cities that have developed these urban agricultural zones. Some of them have created districts within their zoning plans. Some of them have created special agricultural zones. New York has this Green Thumb program that includes tax benefits. Washington, D.C. has this urban agricultural tax abatement program where you can apply and you actually create a contract and it has a tax abatement connected. So it's sort of a well-used strategy. I think we originally wanted to propose this idea of an overlay district. I think we learned as we discussed this that many cities use overlay districts in other ways to create zones for building, changing building, for downtown and for specific needs. But they said it is something that cities have used. I think we were looking for the possibility of an overlay district that might include Wellspring Harvest. It could include other areas in the city. There's this urban renewal site that's a bigger site, which has, I think we are at Wellspring Harvest meeting many of the goals of the urban renewal site in terms of local investment and job creation. So it seems like that's one strategy, and I guess that's a question here. Is that a viable strategy? It seems that the other strategy is to do a home rule petition that would create an agricultural tax district. It could be for a site, but it could be more broadly for urban farms in the city. And we have actually had a conversation with our state delegation who seemed open to this idea of a home rule petition. And then, for the city, we take some definition about what a farm is, because our challenge is that the state defines a farm as 5 acres or more, and that doesn't fit in an urban setting. But USDA uses a revenue-based definition in there for urban farm. So I guess that's a second possible strategy to go here. So I guess we're hoping to discuss those proposals.
Yeah. Thank you, Fred. You could stop sharing so I can get the screen back on.
I think the big question is it doable?
And is it something, do we have the will, right, to do it? I know that Wellspring Harvest, the greenhouse has been around almost 10 years.
6
6 years, okay. I was dreaming before that. So it's been around 6 years, and I know it has struggled with the tax, a large amount of tax. It is a co-op, it's a business, so it's worker owned. And we want, of course, to increase businesses in the city. That's why we're Eco Dev committees involved in this discussion. So how do we get to a place where we can help this business and maybe even encourage more of this type of business in our city? To help us get to a place where these kind of businesses
Mark, come
are
in.
viable. Okay, yes, Ms. Betsy.
I just wanted to say the reason we make this reference to the 61A is because that is something that the Commonwealth, or legislation of the Commonwealth passed years ago, recognizing that basically no farm in this state would be viable if it had to pay taxes based on either being residential or commercial. And they created this special agricultural rate, which is defined, which is based on your sales, your production and sales, rather than the land class, what the land is. Unfortunately, they use the term farm in the legislation, and the Massachusetts Constitution defines farm as 5 acres or more. The Farm Bureau has been attempting to get legislation passed through the legislature, get a constitutional amendment passed through the legislature that would bring the definition of a farm closer to this USDA level. But the problem is that with plain legislation takes often 6 to 8 years in the legislature to begin with. Constitutional amendment requires 2 consecutive sessions, which is 4 years worth of time to pass the legislation, and then a constitutional convention to take place. So the feeling is that's somewhat pie in the sky, which is why we're looking to have to try to see. But then the other side of it, unfortunately, almost all of the urban agriculture entities in the state are nonprofits, are organized as nonprofits. Wellspring Harvest, we know of a microgreens company in Boston, are 2 of there may be a few others that are organized as to attempt to be for-profit businesses. So we're somewhat, we're being caught between a rock and a hard place. So what we're looking for is basically to get what has been recognized for all other agriculture, an agricultural tax rate.
Thank you for that, Ms. Betsy. So at this time, I do want to allow, I know that I've spoken to Patrick at length. And I'm glad that Tim and Phil, you guys are here. At this time, I'd like to have the counselors, if you guys have any comments or any questions. I know that Tim Allen, Jose Delgado, and Catering Walsh did the tour at the greenhouse. And we're most impressed. Anyone have any comments or questions from the counselors?
I have a couple comments and a couple questions.
Delgado.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to thank you guys for the tour that you gave us, what was it, a week or 2 ago. Definitely really enlightening to see the work that you're doing there, especially doing it in an area of land that, needs to be redeveloped. I know there's some complications there, but what you guys are doing there is pretty amazing to see and to hear all the work that you're trying to do within the community as well in terms of donations of lettuce and things like that. I guess my question might be for Pat to start off is, I guess, what is the current tax now and for this place, and then for Betsy and Fred, is what would you be doing? I mean, right now, if we do nothing, right? I'm not saying that's what we're going to do, but if we do nothing, it's making it less viable for you guys to operate. By doing this, is this just helping you guys to stay afloat? Would you be reinvesting whatever potential savings into growing? Like, what's the path forward after that? So
So let Patrick go ahead first.
Sure, I'm just looking up the current tax bill for this fiscal year. Do you have it off?
It's $15.50 a month, what it is, 53 a month, whatever, times 12, so that's what the current,
1,550.
yeah. That's what it is,
So that's about $18,600
yeah.
a year.
Mm.
And what you're proposing is something similar to the whatever the state has in terms of 5,000 acres or more. So what would that reduce your bill by? Do we have an idea of what the potential savings is?
So I calculated from the 61A rate that it would be 15% of that rate. So we could say what that would be, would be closer to 2,700. So it would be $15,000 less.
Hmm.
Of a savings. And can you, I know you've mentioned it before, but for the folks that are here, like do you guys have kind of an idea of what the economic impact of having this business in Springfield is? I think that'd be helpful for folks to understand that while the city itself, would be losing probably $15,000 in revenue, but the economic impact that you guys are doing within the community with jobs, and other things that you're doing.
Sure, yeah. So we've created 7 jobs, mostly from people in the neighborhood. I think it was significant that we developed this brownfield site. It had been
Yeah. It was the old Chapman valve plant that was there, so it was very contaminated. It was a brownfield. It was cleaned up by the city and the state a little bit, and they still can't grow things in the ground, and that's why they have the water beds, the hydroponic.
And I mean, it had been fenced in. There were needles there. It was definitely a crime
Eyesore.
site in the
With a lot of
neighborhood.
trash.
I think building the greenhouse, created a spot there that was lit. So I think in terms of safety, it was a benefit. Last year, we sold $378,000 worth of produce, so that we delivered locally and throughout the state, actually. And so it's it's a source of fresh produce in the city. We deliver to public schools and to hospitals and to and I think so in that way it's a source of fresh food that with all the uncertainties about imports and climate change, it has some value to the city in terms of summer food independence. So I think, yeah, so in terms of job creation, and then it's also involved us in the neighborhood in many ways. We've done other things with the mobile market, runs out of the greenhouse. We've been involved in a prescription produce project with Bay State and UMass that's connected nutrition to health. So it's been a kind of a springboard for doing other food and nutrition work in the city.
Yeah.
So I'd like to respond to Councilor Delgado. So the total tax bill for fiscal 25 was essentially 20,500. And that is essentially based on what is the full and fair cash value of the property. So as you may remember from tax classification hearings, we have to assess all properties in Springfield at full and fair cash value. Now, one thing I would point out, there is 61A, which does require 5 acres, but buildings are still taxed as well at their full and fair cash value. So it's just the land that has a reduction in 61A, not the building itself. So I'm not sure that calculation would really be applicable under 61A, even if you had 5 acres.
Appreciate that clarification, Pat. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anything? Okay, thank you, Counselor. Counselor Whitfield, I see you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just really wanted to hear from Patrick on the taxes. So he went next.
Okay.
Then I wanted to hear from Tim Sheehan, just to see if this is even feasible or his thoughts around this plan.
So who's going first? Pat?
Tim, I think
You
he's
got
talking
two
about Tim
Tims.
Sheehan.
Want me to go? Can you hear, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, yeah, and I think Counselor, are you talking about Tim Sheehan?
Oh, I wasn't sure, yeah, okay, Tim Sheehan.
Yes, I'm sorry, Counselor Allen. I was talking about Tim Sheehan.
Yeah,
Just kind of wanted to hear his perspective because I do got
yeah,
a
good.
for a meeting, so I was trying to hear Patrick and Tim Sheehan's perspectives.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Tim, go ahead.
In terms of formulating a plan for it, we certainly can do that, but in terms of creating the overlay, I guess my question is, we're looking at a structure that you're seemingly not eligible for because you're short on land size. I guess the question back on Patrick's end is, assuming the city wanted to do this, is there a viable way to do it legally?
I don't think so. It would have to be some sort of special legislation because everyone in Massachusetts, per the Constitution, is required to pay their fair share in tax. And there are only a few avenues where it could reduce that tax amount. One would be charitable exemption. Another are some personal exemptions, statutory clauses is what we call them. So age and age eligibility with income and assets. So outside of that, and then there's, 61A for agriculture. There's relatively few other avenues to really alter someone's requirement to pay their fair share. Now in cities like Springfield, another tool we have is to basically shift the tax rate from residential to commercial. So that essentially not everyone's paying their fair share, but that's constitutionally allowed. So outside of that, outside of some sort of legal change, no, I don't think there's an avenue for us to basically reduce the assessment of the property.
Yeah. And that's why I don't like really listening to Patrick.
I know, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Patrick.
Sure.
Thank you.
How short are you in terms of land area?
So we have 1.7 acres and we are actually adjacent to this 16 to 17 acre site
Yeah.
that the city owns. We had approached the city at one point about whether they might carve out a piece to give us, actually, we have a weird shaped lot anyhow, but they are doing an environmental cleanup of the site. Well, you may know more. But whether we could carve out a piece that would make us 5 acres would be.
That seems an easier solution, doesn't it?
Except that we would be expanding our operations by building an additional structure.
And then we pay
So
more
we're sort of
taxes.
caught between them, sorry,
By the
Yeah.
chair, Ms.
yeah,
Betsy.
sorry.
Go ahead.
I think we're caught because our agriculture is inside. It'd be interesting to find out how Devon's taxes the other, major greenhouse around is Little Leaf, but they're an industrial operation. I mean, they are huge and they are run with very few people. I mean, they're run as an industrial, so
Right,
maybe
right.
they can get away with being industrial.
Yeah, so I
But
think,
it would be made to find out
well, and I
in
think there-
Connecticut, I mean, one of our other competitors is in Connecticut and how it's a different state, so
well, there's different options that we can consider. And this probably is not it because we don't have the 5 acres. Although I keep thinking about, okay, well, how much lettuce are we growing? Are we growing 5 acres worth? Right? But that's a whole nother thing. So I think the home rule petition might be our way of going, which, the legislature can do that. And they said that they'd be willing to do it. So, well, I'm glad we're having this conversation. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, with the city's property, we could clearly, put a portion of it out under an RFP dedicated for this type of business model. And ultimately, get you to the 5 acres that you would need to qualify. And, ultimately you'd have to respond to the RFP and it would be a competitive process, but if you were successful with that, then you would meet the requirement. And
That's, yeah.
that seems like, you know, rather than doing contortions of home rule and trying to change the state constitution, seems like it's a little easier path.
Okay,
It may not happen overnight, but at least it would be a path forward to get you where you wanted to ultimately be, should you be successful in the RFP process.
right. Okay, that's an option. And again, that's why I'm so happy that we're meeting, because we're thinking about different ways of doing it. So I see Council Davila's hand up.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to all. Fred, good to see you. First of all, my apologies, I couldn't make the tour, but I will be sending you an email because I do want to have a tour of the facility. I hear nothing but good things from that. But just a quick question. I heard you say that there's going to be some loss in revenue in terms of tax payments, but you also made the argument that that the location provides fresh produce to the city, which is so critical, particularly since we have a lot of food deserts areas. You say we employ 7 people. Are we expecting an increase of job opportunities, or is it just going to stay as it is? I'm just wondering, you know, is this going to
Yeah.
create more jobs, basically?
So our plan, we have on our current site, space to double in size. So our plan has been to build a second greenhouse and to double the staff. And so we're actually in the process of looking at how, you know, how we can do that, looking at different crops to grow there. But that is a plan. I think if we could access more land, it would open other possibilities too, including some energy possibilities. I mean, the energy costs are one of the big expenses.
Okay.
Could do solar or something on a bigger site that would be significant.
Okay. All right, Fred, thank you. I look forward to seeing the location myself. Thank you. Excellent conversation, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Whitfield?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my question is about that. I think Fred said 17 acres of land that the city owns. Tim, has there been any conversation about what's gonna happen with that land? And if not, can we get into conversations with Wellsprings? Maybe like supporting their initiatives and things like that?
Well, we're going through environmental remediation on the site currently, Counselor. What I was indicating was, you know, obviously the city would look to redevelop the property once the remediation had been completed. But what I was indicating was, you know, that process is typically the city goes out for an RFP relative to the property to get the highest and best use for it. They would have to respond to the RFP, and if successful, then we would be able to work with them.
Okay, is it 6 acres or 17? How big is that?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think they need, what we were, they need to get to the 5 acres in order to qualify for the reduced tax rate.
No, what I meant was how big was the lot that, I mean, the
It's
parcel?
17, it is
About-
17 acres, but
about that.
I don't think they're looking to take on the entire 17 acres.
We would, no, only kidding. So, yeah, it's you know how I think big. Yeah, it's 17 acres in total, that empty lot.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so Tim, let's talk about it, right? So how quickly do you think we could get an RFP out if we decided to go that route?
Getting the RFP out isn't necessarily the issue.
It's a cleanup.
The issue is figuring out, you know, what portions of the site are still going under environmental remediation, and if there is, and I'm assuming under the 61A, correct me if I'm wrong, does it have to be contiguous?
I think it does.
Yeah, I would assume. So
You may have modified that.
to try and figure out, you know, if there's a piece that we could basically carve off and put out for an RFP,
Mm,
basically saying that we want to, the city wants to support a sustainable agriculture.
yeah. Can we start doing that maybe?
Yeah, we
See
can look at that.
see what's available, because I know they don't need the whole 17 acres, of course. They probably could use it. I know you had some plans for it, but I think at least to meet the 5 acre qualification
Mm-hmm.
for the time being, that'd be great if you could do that, Tim. I'd really appreciate that.
Sure.
Oh, perfect.
Madam
Yeah.
Chair, I can't
Um,
seem to find my hand raising. I don't know
Oh,
why.
I'm sorry. Go ahead,
No,
Counselor.
no, that's all right. No, it's to that conversation. I mean, I'm looking at the map right now, and it looks like, between where Wellspring Harvest is and Moxon Street, there's a good chunk of land that, to me, looks like could potentially round out that 5+ acres, you
Mhm.
know. And the other piece that I'm looking at, and I'm not saying, obviously do the RFP process, and this type of, um, I guess, use for that land would speed up, the development of that area
Mhm.
faster than, obviously we have all these kind of land kind of inspections and things like that because they're not using the actual grounds. The other piece that I like about it is that Moxon Street right there, I mean, that wooded area is known forever in terms of people dumping and cleaning and kind of opening up that chunk of land between them and Moxon. Actually would, I think, provide better visibility and hopefully decrease whatever activities continues to go on back there while you're still looking to redevelop the rest of that huge chunk of land. So I think I agree with some of my colleagues on that. But I'm also not against simultaneously looking at special legislation because I know that it's the state constitution, right? And it was designed whenever it was created, designed for the 5 acres. But with the growth in urban farming and the realities that many urban communities don't have 5 acres, right? To do this. I mean, I think, you know, I would suggest doing something in parallel
Mm,
in terms of looking at this RFP process, but also still, putting that out there for at least a conversation starter, for other communities like Springfield who don't have 5 acres and folks who are trying to do that. So that's just my 2 cents. Because again, this is a reality for urban communities and the growth within, folks looking back to farming, to raising, everybody during COVID started planting stuff in their backyard, right? And but from a business standpoint, I think we should still look at it to not harm urban businesses like this. So
thank you, Counselor. That makes a lot of sense. Let me let Counselor Walsh, go ahead.
Tim, I was just wondering, have people expressed interest in that 17 acres?
There's been folks that have expressed some interest in it, but the issue is understanding the environmental contamination that's there.
Can they build on there, like structures, houses?
Um, in terms of the
Like the chemicals?
the remediation issues, it depends on what standard of remediation you ultimately do.
Okay.
And the other thing that when we were at the Wellspring, we were talking about working with the schools, because you actually don't do a lot with the schools, is that correct? I mean, I think we should encourage the schools to get their
Yeah, definitely.
lettuce,
think-
6 different kinds of lettuce and
Mhm,
basil. and,
basil. And then tomatoes, I want
It
tomatoes.
just makes sense to have.
Yeah, no, it
schools.
certainly would. I think this is it's a hidden gem in our city. It really is. To Council Delgado's point, before Wellspring Harvest got to that area was dark. It was, really blighted. And when Wellspring Harvest came, they built the greenhouse. The area has like livened up and it's opened up. Even the Moxon projects are on the other side. They've been able to participate, in the greenhouse activity. So, just having more of that, I think just makes sense. So go ahead, Fred, and then
You were-
Betsy.
Okay.
So what I'm gonna say, Wellspring does have an interest in that 17-acre site and the city had done a brownfield study. They needed an interested party. It's a little bit of a dance, right? Wellspring has done kind of a sketch of a plan for the site. I know it was mentioned in some of the brownfield site and the environmental funding. The dance is you need someone interested, but there's no commitment because of this RFP process. So I think we've been in that dance, but we do have an interest in the bigger site, but we know that's
I think
a longer process. and
we'll
all.
take the incremental.
I just want to mention
They
that.
don't like to move too fast.
Yeah, I did want to mention that the state legislation that has been considered has a gradation. They didn't want to change the whole 5-acre land requirement, but they said in urban areas, it was sort of stepped, depending on the size of the urban area, it was going to allow for smaller sites. So the bigger the area was going to allow for smaller lots. So there is a model for thinking about, what an urban agricultural state policy should look like.
Can you speak to that a little more? So kind of what the proposed legislation may do?
It would say that for urban area, I guess it was recognition that cities can't meet this 5-acre. I mean, this is unusual, right? There's a big lot next to us, but so what it did is said that for the to be designated a farm, which means to allow 61A, if your city has this population, it could be 2 acres, and if it had this population, it could be 1 acre. That's not exactly it, but it was a
That
sort of a
concept.
smaller size to meet the state's farm definition. So
And that's currently proposed?
Yes,
It
yeah,
was
we could get, we could,
proposed- Yeah, it's been in the
well, it
legislature.
would be this, well, we should find out, I will assume we should check that whether this session was the same as last. What was, because you
Yeah.
testified at we submitted
Testimony,
at
yes.
the
That
hearing.
could answer, that
Right.
could solve.
It's just that it's a long road, right, to get that.
But if that happened, we wouldn't need the home rule petition.
That's at least 5 years away. I
Oh,
think
okay.
it's not.
So we still
because
need to work on.
It's
home
gonna
rule.
don't
be two
think it-
consecutive sessions, which are each 2 years.
Right, okay,
How long is the mediation process?
remediation.
How long will that take?
Oh, I think it's a matter of taking a look at the previous studies to figure out, where the contamination is actually at its heaviest, and try to figure out if we can get areas that, aren't necessarily impacted by the environmental contamination.
Go ahead, Ms. Betsy.
Well, and that was sort of the situation with this part of the site
Right.
10 years ago.
That's correct.
And it had needed some remediation, but not as much as other parts already. My question, I guess what I'm trying to get is, and maybe you can help just get a better explanation, and maybe we need to just do more. How are buildings on, I'll call it regular farms, Hadley Farms, handled? If a building is actually for the agriculture, is it do you know how that's handled?
I don't, because we don't have any.
Well, that's why I'm wondering if our building might in fact be able to fall under this, because it's like the barn. Because it's a building only for agricultural purposes.
So I
So I
don't
guess
know
we-
the answer.
so we
a
need to
final
research
answer
that.
yet.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm-
Okay, yeah, so, because it might all be eligible, but it might not be, because,
Right.
yeah, okay, that's,
Right.
Is the structure that they have currently taxed?
Yes,
And what is the value of the structure?
we have the value at 400,000
yeah.
for the value. Total 520,000,
For all of it?
correct.
But is there a pullout for the building only?
400,000.
Okay.
Phil, thank you so much for being here. I thought we might need you for the overlay district. Do you have any comments or any questions for us?
No, I think the conversation is good. I just, I've kind of had conversations with, or at least through emails with Betsy and Fred, that I just don't see an overlay district as the answer, because an overlay district isn't going to affect your tax rate. You know, I think in some of these other communities, they may have done overlay districts just to allow the underlying use. You know, in Springfield, overlay districts are really used as a regulatory control at the exit control signage. There's a couple other overlay districts. So I just don't think at the end of the day, a zoning overlay district is going to get you to where you want to go.
Right, yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, Patrick made that very clear to me, so. Anyone else, any last comments? I think I really love that we're here today and that Tim, you offered that idea. I know we've been talking about the RFP for the 17 acres for a long time, but I think getting it to, so that Wellspring has at least the 5 acres for now, I think that's a great idea. And it probably will be quicker than maybe the home rule petition or the
So
constitutional
what
change.
does that do to their tax rate if they get the 5 acres? What would happen?
So there's actually a formula from the state that looks at like how many acres are being actively used. And that portion is basically a reduced value. It's still taxed at the commercial rate, but it's just at a much less value. So it's not full and fair cash value, but the state gives out a formula. So what that would be here, I don't know, because it would depend upon how many, I think it's actively used land. So if you, let's just hypothetically say you get 17, but you're only using 2, I don't know if that's applicable here either.
Or maybe only property like this?
Yes, yeah.
This does happen. I wondered if someone else would apply for the same consideration.
Does the issue of it being hydroponic make a difference because it's not in the ground?
Well, that was
That was
the,
my question.
correct.
we
I
need to
don't know the answer.
We
to
need to
that.
study, we need to
Right.
find out, yeah. There's some folks at MDR and the Farm Bureau I'm in contact with, so I will
Okay.
follow up on,
That would be an important point.
yeah, I know.
And I think, Fred.
Well, I think the only other farm I know of in Springfield that's sort of watching this as they're looking to grow is Nordica. I mean, right, because right now
What about,
they're running a farm, but
the one
are
on Walnut Street?
residential.
Only the community
Gardening the community?
said.
They're a nonprofit.
They're a nonprofit, okay. All right, so, yeah.
Good question.
So that's
Go
our
ahead,
other
So
So
pilot.
what's the,
Go ahead, Counselor Allen.
oh, thanks, yes. So what are the good conversation, just trying to follow, is there an absolute next step we need to take? Or, the Constitution thing sounds far-fetched at this point, and the home rule, is that got possibilities? Or Fred and Betsy, what's your, I don't say drop dead date, but I mean, what has to happen for your financial viability? Is there anything in there that we can help with that? Like, do we need to look at that, the 17 acres and see if we could work something out to use some of the 17 acres? I'm not getting the exact next step. I know there's great.
Yeah, Counselor Allen, so that's what Tim Sheehan is gonna be helping us to work on, I hope. Is to try to get an RFP out so that Wellspring can respond to it so that they could get to the 5 acres. That's what the
Okay.
next step, immediate next step is. But I think Counselor Delgado suggested that we simultaneously possibly work on the home rule petition so that later on, that could keep moving forward. And with the state legislature's support, that should be able to go through.
Well, and we need to find out this research, there is this additional research and
Right.
that we need to find out how. Because if just getting 5 acres doesn't really do it,
Mhm,
anyway,
mhm.
we'll find out.
Right, so
I
then.
think that's our immediate next step.
Yeah.
That's what you have to
I-
do first,
yeah,
then.
yeah.
And then I think also, Council Delgado asked about the economic impact that Wellspring has had. I think if you guys could put together something, a
We've done that.
report of directly what the economic impact, and then the potential for growth. If we have the 5 acres, how many more employees could be employed? How much more, produce could be grown, and distributed to the city?
Yes.
So that would be good. So then do that. So then
He's
the
done
next
that
step
for our
is,
funders.
perfect.
investors.
So that, the research, Ms. Betsy, are you gonna do that maybe?
Yes, yeah.
Great. So research on what we would need to do to meet the requirements for the 5 acres, for the 61A.
Well, or what the implications are, how it would,
Right.
how it would work.
And what would you would have to do to meet that?
And,
Go ahead, Fred.
So one thing I want to say, I know we talked about, and this is a separate discussion about, sales is at the other side if we can think longer term about how we could be selling to the Springfield schools, which is our local school that we do, we're selling to 5 other school districts, but because of
not
Sodexo, their requirements, which they don't accept the state's food safety certification, we haven't been able to get into the Springfield schools. But I was wondering, so this would mean having to subdivide that property, right? That's a piece that the city
Yeah,
would
we'll
need
go
to
through
do.
that and figure that out.
And then, I guess then there would be the question of, when we bought this from the redevelopment authority, we paid a significant amount of money, but I know the city sometimes sells land for, $1 or whatever. So I guess that's the other question.
So you
Is
would
there
give
a
acres
cost?
$1?
Yes.
Well,
They want.
I guess I'm questioning
50
about
cents.
price. I was questioning about price.
maybe not enough.
It wasn't.
That would be up to you to basically respond in
I
terms of your RFP.
I,
But just remember, the city has to put it out for RFP and it would be a competitive process.
I see.
Mhm.
So you make
Yeah.
a bid that includes dollars for that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just- I
I've
didn't-
been on housing project, review committees.
I got the fire station,
All right.
so anything is possible. All right, great. This has been great conversation. I feel really positive about our next steps. Yes,
I just have
Patrick, I'm
one other-
sorry.
Yes, so, I think you do have to be current on
Yes.
real estate taxes, okay,
Yes.
in order
We are
to,
very behind.
okay.
In order to.
For an RFP,
apply to-
correct.
I see.
Yeah, there's a check basically that's done if there's any outstanding issues
Mhm.
with the respondent, and that basically would take your RFP out of consideration.
I see.
Okay, so we gotta come current. So they gotta make some money.
Okay.
Is there a deadline for their tax bill?
Yes, so there's 4 quarterly tax bills that are due. I do believe that this parcel is in tax title, for the last couple of years.
That's important.
All right, thank you for that, Patrick. Thanks, Tim, for asking that. Anybody
We
else?
understand that even if future going forward, it changes.
Yeah, you owe what you owe.
We owe what we owe.
Yeah,
Yes, well aware.
all right, great. Anything else, anyone? Well, thank you so much. Thank you all for being here, and I'll see you all at the next meeting. We'll be having the next meeting maybe in a few weeks
Yeah.
to see where we're at. All right, thank you all. Have a great afternoon.